Alrighty, let's get started. So, welcome everyone. Thank you guys for joining our first Lunch and Learn hosted by Green Screens. Thank you all for joining, and we hope you're having a fantastic Wednesday. So, just to quickly introduce myself, I'm Celine, the marketing director here at Green Screens, and I'm joined by Matthew Silver, our vice president of strategic partnerships here at Green Screens, and Dave McCoy, vice president of sales at Bitfreighter. So obviously the automation revolution is in full swing, and without a doubt, it's on many companies' radars, especially going into 2024. So our goal with today's Lunch and Learn is to really get down to the basics beyond just the buzzwords and explain how brokers can actually increase efficiency by leveraging tools such as Bitfreighter and green screens. So if you have any questions throughout this discussion, please leave them below. We have saved some time for a quick Q&A after. So we'd love to hear any questions that you have. But with that being said, I will pass this discussion off to Dave to quickly introduce himself first.
Hey everybody, Dave McCoy, VP of Sales at Bitfreighter. I guess I can give a little background on myself. I've been at Bitfreighter for almost a couple years now. Before that, I was with DAT for 12 years. And spent a lot of time over those 12 years visiting brokers and carriers. And there was always one thing that seemed like was a frustration in this space, which was integrating two shippers. Like how do I make my integration to a shipper easier, cheaper? And there was never really a good answer. There were solutions out there, but there was bad support that was involved with it. There was like long implementation times. There was hefty bills that came along with it. And so integrating was hard. And all the calls and all the visits that I had over those years, it was the same answer of like, yeah, there's just really nothing else out there. This is just kind of the way it is. And one of the brokers that I met over those years that was a DAT customer, like almost everybody is obviously, but he had the same question. His name was Brad Perling. He's our CEO now at Bitfreighter. And when he asked me what other solutions were out there, if there was any other options, I told him no. That I think that got his wheels turning. And this was like right before COVID hit. And then once COVID hit, we all took a step back and he really started to think about, there's got to be a better way out there. And since there wasn't, he decided to start it. And I quickly joined on after that. A big believer in solving this issue. And Bitfreighter was pretty much born from that time. And we've been working very hard on being the freight integration platform in this space. And so yeah, that's kind of my backstory. We'll get more into it, but I'll let Matt introduce himself before I just start going down the rabbit hole.
I love it. Let's go down memory lane. I want to talk about all the things we've done in our past because like Dave, I've been around freight for a little while. So I'm Matt Silver, Celine said, VP of Strategic Partnerships for Green Screens. Like Dave, I had a past in this industry. So I spent about a decade building and scaling brokerages, some of them notable and very large, and others, nobody ever heard of. And we were very, very tiny, starting from just an idea sort of in a basement and scaling up from there. But along the way, much like Dave called out, I felt the pain of what tools were available and all the gaps that existed in this industry. Everybody's on different pieces of technology. None of these technologies seem to ever want to talk to each other. And then every couple of years, you would get some big new company come to the forefront of freight and say they're going to level the playing field, right? One technology for all. It's a single marketplace. Brokers, shippers, carriers, everybody's going to be on one platform. And it never really came to fruition that way. So as my brokerage career, very fortunately, as I say, I was picked out of there by a tech company. I moved over to the freight tech side, and I've had the best time of my life for about the last 4 or 5 years. Most recently, the last year, actually, as of last week, when I checked the calendar, is my 1 year anniversary here at Green Screens, and I've never slept better, first and foremost. But I've enjoyed freight again because I think Dave might have the same sentiment, but we're in a position now where we get to help not just the company that we're party to, but we get to help the industry move along, become more connected, and align ourselves with like-minded companies. And before we dive into, what Dave and I do at our companies, we'll just kind of set the groundwork of what our companies do. At Green Screens, we're a pricing tool, and unlike a lot of the pricing tools that have existed in our industry, the legacy tools out there, we're not an index that's backwards looking. We do have an element of aggregating a market rate for a full truckload shipment, van, flatbed, and reefer. But unlike the tools that exist where you can segment off or filter the results through the last day, the last week, month, 6 months, or year, we're forward looking. So we're pretty different in that regard. We're being able to predict the rate into the future of what the truck will cost, and then adding to that market rate, we build out a machine learning model that's specific to each and every brokerage on our platform, right? Brokerage A versus brokerage B, they might move freight in the same lane, but that doesn't mean the cost is going to be the same for both of those. There's going to be influence of their actual shipper community, the depth of capacity network, the type of cargo that they're moving, right? Two van loads are not created equally. There's different weights, there's different wait times that get factored into there. And then there's also different negotiating tactics that the actual brokerage or broker at the helm will influence the transaction with. And Dave, want to kick it back over to you first to introduce exactly what Bitfreighter is. I know you talked a little bit about it, but if you want to start there and then talk about real-time rating, and then I'll jump back in and talk about dynamic pricing.
Okay. Yeah, Bitfreighter is, like I said, a freight integration platform. So we are just very focused and experts on integrating brokers and carriers to shippers. And so that comes in a lot of different capacities there. You have, the sending of tenders from a shipper to a broker or carrier, and we can use EDI to do that. We're an EDI company. We're also an API company. So, and that kind of fits more in with what we're talking about today with the real-time rating. So we connect to shippers to allow you to automatically bid or price to them instantly. And kind of on the subject of what real-time rating is, real-time rating is kind of this recent development, I guess I would say, over the last couple of years in freight, where shippers have almost started to demand a little bit that they want instant pricing from their preferred carriers. So when this all kind of started, like I said, a couple of years ago, and there were a small amount of shippers that wanted to just get direct pricing from their preferred carriers, and they had the capabilities in their system to receive it, but then they kind of looked on everybody else like, you guys figure it out. And so this was all on the brokers and carriers then to try to figure it out. And early on, you just had the brokers and carriers that had development on staff to write these integrations, write these APIs, and be able to provide this instant pricing. And it kind of left everybody else out. And companies like Bitfreighter allow everybody to participate in this. So it's not just like the big brokers and carriers out there that are preferred carriers. There's, the smaller, mid-sized, larger brokers that don't have development on staff that are still preferred carriers. And they don't have the means to get a development team on staff and write APIs to all these different shipper systems being like E2Open, Transplace, Oracle systems, the proprietary systems like Anheuser-Busch uses a segmented version of Transporion. So, I mean, there's all these different APIs that have to be created, and they just don't have the means to do that. And so with a company like us, you can You can sign on with us and say, hey, we have a shipper that's that we have a really good scorecard with, and we're a preferred carrier with them. We have the ability to provide this instant pricing. Can you guys help us out? So yeah, what we do is we already have all these integrations, all these APIs with all these shipper systems. So that allows these smaller broker carriers, the ones that are larger ones that don't have development on staff, to sign on with us and be able to provide instant rating. And what real-time rating really is just the ability for a shipper that, it kind of falls out of like the contract. It's more of a spot kind of pricing. So they want to be able to cover these shipments in real time. They don't want to put it out to a spot board. They just want it to assign it to one of their preferred carriers. And what we're seeing right now is a couple of things. We're seeing shippers that are like reaching out to brokers and they're saying, we want to put you in as a preferred carrier. We want instant pricing from you. And then we're also seeing brokers and carriers that know that they are a preferred carrier for a certain shipper, and they'll reach out to them asking to be a preferred carrier and get on this list, because being on this list is a very small list. Usually it's 4 or 5 preferred carriers, and some of them are very large brokers. Some of them are the ones that are that medium to large size that don't have the development staff, but they're providing that just exemplary service. And so, but essentially all it is the shipper wants to be able to click a button on a shipment and get an instant price on that shipment in that moment. And if they like what they see, they can just say, I'll take this one. And that automatically sends the tender right into the broker carrier TMS, ready to go. So we handle all facets of that. With real-time rating, you have to be able to provide an instant price in that moment, and that's a little scary. So there's a lot of ways that you can provide that instant pricing, but essentially you need to, when they click that button, our integration gets all that shipment information and allows us to come up with a quote specific for that shipment. So you got to take all that stuff into account, like what is the shipment? Where is it going? When is it picking up? When is it delivering? All that kind of stuff you need to take into account, come up with a quote in less than a second and deliver it back to them and let them view it, right on their screen as soon as they click the button. So to do that, when we get all that shipment information, we first need kind of a starting point. So that's where our partnership comes in, is that starting point. When that shipment information comes in, we're able to do a quick lookup on green screens, see what that rate is, see what you guys think that rate is, and then let the broker or carrier manipulate that rate a little bit. Like how would they price things if they were just, doing a spot quote? So they would look at green screens, they would look at other pricing engines out there, they would see what the market is. And we really want to have that as a starting point. But then, you need to take into account things like, is this thing picking up in the next 12 hours? Like that. Usually we would charge a little service fee on there. So you add things like, is it picking up on a Sunday? Is it, did this quote request come in after hours? All of these things, we have a user interface that allows the broker or carrier to manipulate that rate, the green screens rate. And so that's what our platform does, is allow you to make the connection to your customer, allow you to build in your personalized quoting methods to provide an accurate quote, something that that if it does get awarded, you're not going to be like, what, man, we're losing money on this stuff because we're not quoting it the way we usually would. Our system allows you to set up those methods the way you normally would quote. That being said, it's something that you need to kind of stay on top of. I mean, every day you need to go in there and set up your strategies for all your shippers that you have set up to auto quote. Yeah, that's what our quoting system at a very high level does. And then on the back end, we also, like I said, do EDI and APIs for the incoming of tenders. So we have integrations with all the broker and carrier TMSs as well on the other side. So you do get awarded that freight. What happens to it then? Well, it comes back through Bitfreighter. It gets pushed into the broker carrier TMS, gets built in there. It's an available load. You get notified that you just awarded that tender. There's a quote ID that came from Bitfreighter that was passed back through the tender. So you can have the analytics of what we're winning, what we're losing. If we are winning it, our margins, where we want them to be, all that kind of stuff is totally trackable. So, yeah, at a very high level, it's an overview of the platform and kind of the technology there, the real-time rating.
And some really important things that you brought up there, Dave. First off, one of the things that I love is democratizing the access to really great technology, right? You pointed out that in the past, only the brokerages that have their own internal teams are able to build out this type of technology. Now it's very achievable to brokers of all levels, and it's something that we believe in the same as well, right? We displaced and helped smaller brokerages. Well, we displaced incumbent product, but we also displaced the really astute brokers that had billions of dollars of funding. We can now service the SMB market with the same tools, often better tools, because we're looking at the transaction history of the entire market rather than a specific brokerage, and get pricing to everybody who needs it, especially for the lanes they don't have history with. But you had a really good point as well in there about not just meeting the demand of the shipper as a broker, right? Not just using a company like Bitfreighter to meet the demand of some of your best customers, but using it as a selling tool to go back to your favorite shippers, the companies that are giving you good freight, and ask if you can be one of their preferred vendors, right? Can we use Bitfreighter to quote more loads, win more freight from you, without that shipper having to do the BCC email list where they're hitting 50 different companies at once. Sometimes they forget to blind copy everybody, or just send it out to bid, right? And we all waste half a day getting to there. But more to the point, mixing technologies like Bitfreighter with the pricing intelligence and the dynamic pricing that Greenscreens has is an absolute win for the brokerage community. On the pricing side of the fence, we are responding in real time to market conditions. Right now, the data set that we're looking at on the brokerage side of the fence is $22 billion in transactional data over the trailing 12 months. And that's where I mentioned, small brokers having access to a pool of data that large puts them at an advantage up against some of those largest brokers, right? There's a lot of brokers that are now in excess of $1 billion in transactional spend on an annual basis. There's not many that are above 5, 10, 15, or $20 billion in data pool. And there's even a lot of companies in freight that aren't aggregating that much data. One of the fun things that I've learned from our team is, right now we're at $22 billion in transactional data in the trailing 12, but we actually scrub out like 35% of that. So we're collecting significantly more than that, but we scrub out and really distill it down to very clean data. And that's what allows us to service partners like Bitfreighter with very exacting cost of coverage. What is the truck going to cost on behalf of our mutual clients? And via the API calls and connectivity with companies like Bitfreighter, we're able to do it in a fraction of a second. And with that, right, you've got the shipper sending out and requesting these quotes, and it's immediately going through Bitfreighter, coming to us, grabbing the answer on behalf of that mutual client, very personalized quote, and sending it right back up that chain through Bitfreighter and right back to the customer with the margin added, right? You know that you're going to have a successful transaction, and you're getting the answer in front of the shipper before they're thinking about anything else, right? Before they could type an email to send it out to one of your competitors, before they can answer the phone and take a solicitation from another broker, the answer is sitting in front of them in their system of record, and they're ready to execute. And Dave, I know we can talk a lot about just the transaction cycle, all the nuance that our companies and teams have built into it. But I want to pivot a little bit and just talk about, we're seeing so much change in the realm of pricing. I know you guys are too. We've, I think like blue in the face as we talk about the changes in freight in the last couple of years, right? We went from these epic highs to these unprecedented lows. One of the things that we're hearing from our customer base when we meet with them is just speed matters, right? I need to get quotes back to my shippers as fast as possible. I need to increase the number of at bats or the total number of quotes I can participate in on a daily basis. And I need to be highly accurate, right? I remember way back in the day, right? I could sit on the phone with Anheuser-Busch. I could spitball a rate and maybe my rep would be like, yeah, it's a little high and I can take $50 off of it, right? We could negotiate in real time and work out where the transaction would actually happen at. And today, because of automation, because of I don't know if it's good or bad, but there's a lot more on everybody's plate these days, right? We're trying to do more with fewer people, and using AI assisted tools to help individuals make decisions, right? I don't think the robots are taking everybody's job necessarily, certainly not in pricing, because there is gut feel, right? Relationship matters. So how you add or subtract from start values or how you add or subtract margin to transactions matters. But from our customer base, really just echoing in on how do I get to bid on more freight more frequently? So I'm up to bat. I'm increasing my total potential to win new freight on a daily basis. How do I transmit it accurately and very quickly to my shippers is ultimately important. Dave, are you guys seeing anything else with respect to changes not just in pricing but also the quoting segmentation of the market?
I mean, there's the beyond real-time rating. I mean, everybody's been on spot boards and quoting on auctions, and you can get scorecard dings if you're not quoting on enough freight on their spot boards. And so we're seeing a lot of people that will utilize our tool to bid on more, cast a wider net, kind of like you were saying. And so beyond like these real-time rating, this new kind of technology that's hit the market in the last couple of years. I mean, spot boards have been around, and it's a very manual process of going in and bidding on just as much as you can. But I mean, that right there is a manual process as well. I mean, every single spot load that's out there, it's a manual process of figuring out, going to the market, checking everything to bid on that single load. And so our APIs also allow us to bid on as much as you want, really, on those spot boards, casting a wide net on that stuff. So I say as much as you want because in our system you can dial it to wherever you want to as far as like your capacity limits go. So we don't want to bid on freight we can't cover, and that our system allows you to set those dials. But yeah, people are coming to us saying, yeah, we just want to kind of cast a wider net on what we're bidding on, and we'll hook them up to spot boards via API. And it's the same kind of thing. I mean, a spot bid will get posted out there and we do the same thing. We grab that shipment information, we do the lookup, allow you to manipulate that and bid right to the spot board and place your bid out there. And it's helping a lot with scorecarding. And that's been, scorecards in this industry have been a huge struggle with people trying to get those scores up for many, many years. And this has helped a lot.
Yeah, I actually envy the brokerage seat these days, right? Back in the day, your scorecard was dinged on tracking visibility. Now it can be dinged for late pickup, late arrival, all these additional factors. But there's so many tools available. And talking about the spot boards, I remember just sitting numbing in front of screens, trying to screen scrape off of it and dump it into Excel, where we could try to run our magic behind the scenes with a manual pricing team and come up with it. And now there's amazing tools, especially the combination of green screens with Bitfreighter, but being able to automate as much of that as possible. And one important thing that I want to touch on is customization of it, right? On our platform, we separate accuracy, which is how accurate did we predict through our ML models the cost of coverage up against what it actually costs to move the transaction. So that accuracy we hold as paramount, right? That's top for us. But we separate it from confidence, and we do assign a confidence score to each and every load that we quote, both with respect to a market rate as well as the individualized ML model. And for us, the way we lens the confidence score, then you can customize it with the integration in Bitfreighter, is the confidence score is really it's a measure of how complex the transaction is or how hard will it be to cover. It's not just taking into account the actual lane that you're looking at, but it's accounting for the depth of your capacity network, your history in that lane. So the probability that your team or the ease in which your team will be able to cover that transaction is accounted for, right? And to Dave's point, you don't want to quote on freight that you're not going to be able to move. That's a nightmare, right? You're just increasing your labor spend on that transaction because you don't have a good history with that lane or you don't have a depth of capacity to reach out to. It doesn't mean it's impossible, but it's important to know if it's an easy cover, you likely have carriers that are set up and vetted. You might even have some delivering loads into the area. And that's a good indication that, hey, we can quote these very, very easily and get them covered up against loads where there's a low confidence score, especially on the ML side. Maybe you want to fail over to the data that's being provided up against the market information. Maybe you know right off the bat, okay, we need to grind this one out, right? We're going to need to engage with any of our digital freight matching tools out there. Maybe we need to post it out to traditional load boards and work it. Maybe we even need to go cold source carriers. And I know that's like a long lost thing, right? I remember printing out lists of carriers in a specific geographic region and calling through 200 different dispatch offices, right? Like, please tell me you have a truck. When might you have a truck? Do you know anybody who has a truck, right? And going through those days, it's really complicated. But again, to the earlier point, using tools that are connected, tools that are taking in these influences that are being spotted in the data sets to mature the data set as it moves forward is incredibly important, but also leaving the door open for influencing it manually, right? You want the human element, you want to account for the relationships and what is actually happening in that transaction, right? You know, I love when I was in the brokerage world and my phone rang at 7 p.m. on a Friday, right? That was always good news, unless a truck didn't pick up, right? If a truck didn't pick up, that was a terrible phone call to get. But if it was a customer you know you didn't have cargo with, it meant one of your competitors didn't pick up a load. And that was going to be a great load for you to cover because you could just gut check that and cover it at pretty much any cost.
Yeah, I mean that we see that too in like the automation side of it. I mean, brokers and carriers that were not quoting on stuff after hours because there was no one there or weekends are now setting up the system to bid on this stuff either on if it's posted on a spot board or if it's a real-time rating request. They are going in and setting bidding strategies and marking that load up by a big percentage. And the thought process, you know, when we first started seeing this was like, let's just bid on it. They're not going to accept this, but at least we'll bid on it. But they're winning those loads and seeing margins of like 30% and stuff. I mean, it's ridiculous. And this is all stuff that they were not bidding on previously. And now they're just, you know, profiting huge because of automation and bidding after hours.
You know, profits and huge are not words we hear together in
All right now,
lately.
yeah, it's nice to say them.
I love it. And I want to, you know, open the door for more success stories. While you were talking about that, one of the ones that came to mind is I had one of our sales reps recently telling me about one of their customers that was engaged with us. You know, obviously, like most companies, post sale, right? We don't just set you up on the platform and leave you alone. We work with our customer success team to make sure that there is adoption within the brokerage that is signed up for our service. We want to train them on all of our tools and what all the features do. And one of our customers had a great rep, right? He'd been there a long time. hardworking guy doing the right thing. And on average, he was making about $4,000 a week in margin, which, he's in I won't discuss what they're doing numbers wise, but in my history in freight, that's a good employee, right? He's making some good money. He's servicing the customers. He's able to stay on top of everything by himself. Didn't need a whole lot of support. But quoting customers, booking loads, finding the carriers, doing everything himself, one man shop, $4,000 a week in margin seemed like pretty successful, right? Making decent commission check, having a good time at work. And when we help the team sit down and go through some of the analytics that we run behind the scenes, we have a product called Insights that pulls out all of this data. We actually found that they were overquoting the customer, which puts them at risk of somebody else calling that customer and offering them a better deal. And similarly, they were overpaying the carriers. And this is where I get a little sensitive to it because I like carriers to do well, right? You want to pay them fairly, but you certainly can't afford to overpay them because if you don't get the cargo, you can't also give the cargo to them. So they did an experimentation with this rep. They sat him down and had the rep really focus on what is the ML rate coming out of green screens? What's the prescribed cost of coverage for this load? And then keeping margin still healthy, but in a better place. They actually ended up increasing total load volume with this rep without working a whole lot harder, right? Out of the existing customer base he was servicing, and actually very quickly moved his total margin on a weekly basis to double what he was producing. And those are the kind of stories when I sit back, it's like, as an operator of brokerages, I always think about the green screens tool and the Bitfreighter tool is like, you have this massive labor savings, right? You're responding instantaneously instead of putting labor into it. That's amazing. And then you hear about some of these use cases with our customers where it's like, yeah, we're also expanding margin, which, Dave, to current times, something we don't talk about lately. We certainly don't hear a lot about. We hear, oh, margins coming down and total volume of shipments is coming down and the sky is falling and how will we ever survive this? It's great to hear some good news from our customer base. Do you have another story of a customer who's been super successful on your platform?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's just about everybody that has got into the automated quoting has been, the ROI is day one with every single one of them. And it does kind of come down, and you touched a little bit on like some training aspect. I mean, there's people that sign on and they just kind of pass rates along. They don't make the quotes their own, and that can hurt them. But I mean, 98% of the customers that sign on with us and spend 5 minutes a day just, revamping their daily quoting strategy, and instead of looking at every single quoting opportunity out there, every single bid that they want to send a quote to one by one, they just set up their strategy each day. Takes 10 minutes. And that's where another facet of Bitfreighter, we come in and really help you and guide through your bidding strategies that you currently have and get that in place so that you can just, one person can go in and knock it out for, their entire customer list. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't take long at all. And when you get that in place, I mean, across the board, we're seeing lots and lots of wins. I mean, there's one customer that it's a little scary, but as soon as they turned it on with a very large shipper out there, they were getting 9,000 quote requests a day. And that's an anomaly. Like, we don't see that often, but I mean, just to like let you know the possibilities that are out there, that again is an anomaly. But I mean, that's the stuff that's possible is a lot of the shippers, I mean, they really are pushing a lot of their freight to this instant bidding. And I think there's a lot of brokers out there that just don't even realize what they're missing out on. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to pinpoint. There's been so many success stories of people that have signed on and they're winning freight that they just did not have the ability to quote on before because they weren't set up in that preferred list. And once they got on the list, then man, like, I mean, it can be, it can save your year, it's that important. And So, yeah, we're seeing, I don't know what the percentages of freight that's being pushed to real-time rating, but it's growing every month now. It seems it's really building, and it's out of all the technologies that we've seen come and go over the years in this industry, this one is something that I think in the next, very short term, 6 to 12 months, is going to be something that's going to be like demanded on RFPs, the capability to be able to provide a shipper with instant pricing. And right now it's, it seems like it's the shippers that are a little bit on, the bigger side. You're still going to have those, the smaller ones that just, they email you for the quick spot request. But if you have relationships and you have customers that are on major platforms, and some of them have their own proprietary technology as well. But I mean, if you have customers that are on these E2 Opens and Oracles and Transplaces and Mercury Gates and those systems are pushing shippers to start utilizing this technology. And so we are seeing a lot of demand coming from shippers being pushed out to their broker and carrier base to get on this. And so this is something that is not going to go away. It's going to be commonplace in our industry in the next 6 to 12 months. And real-time rating or instant pricing or whatever you want to call it is not going to be a buzzword anymore. It is going to be, just kind of the way to provide instant pricing across the board.
Yeah, I think there's, excuse me, a lot going on with this as well, right? I remember just a few years ago, shippers really hammering on their contracts that if you accept this, you cannot post it on any of the public load boards, right? They wanted to keep their freight segmented and ensure that if they were awarding it, that it stayed in-house and it stayed with you. And you brought up something really important that stood out to me is, we often talk about like, well, what question should a broker be asking, or what question should a carrier be asking, or any party? And the reality of it is like none of us know what we don't know, right? We're always kind of stuck to our field of view, and we're trying to service our customers as best as possible. And something that I've seen our team here do at Green Screens really well, and your team, at Bitfreighter do incredibly well, especially when we did the golf event over the summer for charity for autism awareness. That was awesome. Thank you guys for having us. Looking forward to doing it again. We're committed for next year. But we saw it come out in all the conversations between our teams, and whether it was a customer on our platform or your platform or mutual to both platforms, we saw our teams taking a really consultative approach to working with these customers, right? It wasn't just what does my technology do and how do I solve this one problem? It was helping address these blind spots, right? We're seeing market shifts in certain things. We're seeing different tools and different volumes move through different tools. You guys are obviously seeing it with the real-time rating and the demand of shippers. And when it starts coming out in contracts, that's really going to disrupt the normal operation flow for these brokers. So leaning on your partners, your technology partners, to be a voice in the room, to offer guidance on what are we seeing and how can we offer some help, I think is really important, because it's giving a broker a view to more of the industry, not just on delivering rates and figuring out the pricing of things, but industry trends and changes that are coming down the technology pipe. I think that's super important, and something that obviously both of our companies do incredibly well and are certainly happy to help even individuals that aren't part of our customer base, right? I know we meet with prospects all the time, and they're telling us their tales and their woes, and we can fix one piece of it, and then we're bringing in partners like Bitfreighter to solve the other challenges that are in front of them. And Dave, I know I keep asking you this, but I assume you guys are seeing very much the same thing.
Oh yeah, and I was watching a podcast a couple weeks ago, and they were discussing all the new fresh companies on the Freight Tech 25, and us both being on that list. And there was a lot of companies that that we're both kind of partners with as well that all showed up on that list. And it's really cool to see that we're seeing a lot of collaboration in this industry, something that I really hadn't seen until the last, 2 or 3 years, seems like. And that is absolutely making this industry better very quickly. We're all working together to provide, some technology to the mix that has been much needed. And so, yeah, I mean, it's cool how we're all working together. We all kind of can help each other out and point people in the right directions to get everything set up to be able to provide, better service to a shipper, your customers.
Yeah, and it's with like you mentioned, these, we'll call them newcomers, right? I think we were part of a very disruptive freight tech list this year, which I'm super proud of. Congrats to you guys for making the list. Young companies like both of ours as well as some others getting into the list. But what did stand out to me, very similar to what you mentioned, is we're partnered with so many people on that list. And I know you guys are as well, and it really feels like we're this community of, we're trying to raise the ships together, right? We want to be the tide that raises ships and just improves this industry together. And I'm going to bring Celine back in for some Q&A. So I know there's a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. If you guys have any questions, pop it in there. But I did want to address, we got an early question in there that reads, as a carrier, we provide hard rates via API integration, quote, book, track. How do we get on your platforms, plural? So both of us, we're P44 integrated already. Dave, I'll let you answer in just a moment. But for us, anybody who's looking to partner with us, please come to our website. We have a partnerships form you can fill out. You can also find me on virtually every platform that exists out there. This beard is hard to not track in a crowd. Also, if you see our team in public, we're always in Hawaiian shirts. But if you need to get to me directly, my email is just silver@greenscreens.ai. And Dave, I know D McCoy at Bitfreighter.com, right?
Yep. See, that's how close we are with, we work together so much. We have each other's emails memorized. That's great.
I've typed it in enough at this point, and always for good reasons. I'm not complaining to Dave. I just want to get the beards together. We put in great thought on things. But Dave, is that the preferred method for anybody looking to partner with you guys, or is there something else?
Yeah. To answer that question, how do we get on your platforms? I mean, as far as the quoting aspect, we just need to know, obviously, what customer you're wanting to connect to, what platform they're on. And it's really easy. We already have a lot of APIs already going with a lot of these different platforms that different shippers are on. So, once we just know who it is, it's pretty easy to actually connect to the customer. The integration's already done, like I said. So, yeah, a quick conversation and we know what path to take and make the connection. Obviously, there's training that comes in, how to use our platform. We help you set up your bidding strategies, and once you are pretty solid, like let's turn it on, then we can get it going and you can start bidding. Another kind of cool thing that I'll mention about the bidding strategies is once we turn on the integration, you can start receiving those bid requests before you actually start bidding on them. So you can start to get an idea of what is coming across, and just grab those analytics for a few days, a week, or whatever you want to do. And once you're pretty set on how you want to start bidding, then yeah, we just help you set it up. And it's easy as clicking the button to turn it on and start responding to those bid requests. And then on the flip side, the booking, once those are awarded, then we have the integration with your broker carrier TMS that you're currently running. And so when those tenders get awarded to you, we have the integration to just send those straight in, and you get awarded that freight, and that it came from the automation, and you can start tracking it from there. And you're kind of off to the races.
Love it. Celine, welcome back.
Thank you so much. It's been an awesome discussion. I think you guys have killed it so far. We have a few questions just to go over real quick, but we actually went over, we said we were going to do 30 minutes and you guys were on a roll, so I let it go for a little longer. So
Told you that would happen. Whoopsie daisy.
but first question we have, which company has the user interface for the broker to use to manipulate the rate? Dave, I know you had talked about this earlier on in the discussion today.
Yep, that would be us. So yeah, we're the company that, we grab the shipment information with our integration. So we grab all that and then we do a live lookup at that moment to green screens to just grab that market rate, which you manipulate in our system.
Yep. And just real quick, piggybacking on that, if you are on our platform or using us together and you're looking at quoting somebody, a shipper who's not being connected through real-time rating, which is unfortunate, first off, tell them about it. But secondly, you can use our tools standalone through our UI to manipulate the rates. There's a simple calculator in there for you, but it's not going to be as sleek, sexy, and cool as using real-time rating with Bitfreighter.
And then second question we have here, and if you just want to give one piece of advice, I think that would be great. But what advice do you have for companies that are thinking about implementing these new technology tools? So I guess just one piece of advice that you could give.
I don't think I have one.
Okay.
First and foremost, like anytime you're looking at new technology, you want to truly understand the cost from the provider up against the value it's providing, right? I think most brokerages, and in my past on the brokerage side, we're guilty of having too many tools that don't provide value, and then they kind of fall to the wayside. And you ride out spending a ton of money on these contracts. Making sure that you're holding your service providers accountable for the value that they promise to deliver to you is really important. It also opens up your budget to bring in best of breed solutions if you're not paying for things that you don't need. That's where I would start. I could probably go for days about the things you should be thinking about when it comes to new technology.
My advice would be I schedule a demo, probably. I mean, we can start to get into how it would fit for you. And instead of just kind of an overview, we could really look at the program and you get a really good understanding, obviously, of how to set it up and if it would be a good fit for you.
And then last question here, how are the pricing models set up for both providers?
Yeah, so we do two different things. We aggregate what we consider a market rate or a network rate. That's one side of it. The ML model, or the machine learning model, is going to just ingest a brokerage's own data, right? So there's consorted data that help us get to the market rate, and then there's individualized or a highly biased rate that we're going to produce under the ML model. So we're scrubbing out all the data that's fed to us for the brokerage's history. And then on an ongoing basis, we ingest new data, so loads that are booked up against the loads that we've predicted on. We use that to influence and retrain those models and redeploy them. That way, every day, the models that we're producing are getting better and more accurate for all of our customer base. There's always the question, if I'm a massive brokerage, right, billions of dollars of data, how do I protect against not being the only data source for a very unique lane or transaction, or the opposite of I have zero data. I'm brand new. I've never moved this lane before. Can I still get a rate? And the answer to both things is yes. We protect the extremely large from being an over contributor on any given lane. We have a lot of different things in play. And if you get a demo from our sales team, you'll certainly see when we produce a lane rate, we will display the lane. And then you'll see that we default over to modeling similar lanes. So we're taking influences from lanes that maybe are geographically similar, but they could also have similar trends over time that tell us that we can rely on those lanes. And that could help protect not just against data density coming from a single contributor, but it's also going to help enhance the opposite. Somebody or a brokerage that is data lagging, right? They just have a blank spot in their data because they're moving a new lane. So looking at some of those similar lanes, and you don't have to do any of the work. The system will just spit out an answer for you in less than a second into the data there. And I hope that answers the questions. If not, I know like data is a big topic and how we get to the answer. Certainly engage with our sales team, sales at greenscreens.ai. They'll be happy to walk you through it, make sure that you get all of your questions answered. We've got a whole team of data scientists over here also willing to talk to you if you want to get super deep into it.
Yeah, for us, the pricing, I saw something about is it transactional. Bitfreighter is not a transactional priced company. That's something that, the day one of when we formed this, that was something we were not into at all. So everything is unlimited with us. So as far as the quoting goes, you just pay for the API on a monthly basis and quote as much as you want.
Awesome. I know the overcharge bills are not fun, so.
No.
One last question just came in for Matt. So this is, how does Greenscreens determine a broker's ability to buy better or worse in the market? And this is really asking how we do the analysis, whether it's based on zip code, market, or other levels to determine this.
Yeah, so I'll give you the 30-second answer because I know we're short on time here, but do engage with our team. They'll be able to go as deep as you want, but the output is as specific as the input. So if you query us for city state to city state, we will go basically the center of that to the center of that. If you provide us full zip to full zip, we will return results based on that. And then the difference between market and the broker's ability to buy is just looking at consorted data. So data from all of our customer base, that $22 billion and growing aggressively in the trailing 12 months. That data set will give us market. And then the machine learning model specific to your brokerage will tell us what you are going to pay. Right now, I think our global variance for all customers, every customer on our platform is single digit variance between predicted rate and actual booking cost. So we're highly, highly accurate in that regard. But with that, you'll be able to see how your company is buying capacity in any given lane with the mix of your customer staff, capacity network, all of that up against market. So again, you'll know how to go to market to better service that lane.
Awesome. So my last question was going to be, how can people get in touch with you both? But I know you already shared your email addresses to everyone on this call. But I will be happy to send just a follow-up email to everyone who attended today with links to connect with both Matthew and Dave, as well as to schedule demos with both of us. Do you guys have any last thoughts before we end this Lunch and Learn today?
I just want to say thanks for having me on here. It's a big honor. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Dave, for jumping on. Thanks, Celine, for putting this together. I know it's an effort from both of our marketing teams. So Hannah, Ema, everybody behind the scenes helping us out. Really appreciate it. And everybody who spent time with us today, thanks for having lunch with us. Now I'm starving.
All right. Bye, guys.
All right. Thank you.